We have heard now from President Trump saying that he is not ready to make a deal with China. We've heard from Vice President Mike Pence about Hong Kong and a trade deal, the two being linked. And we've also heard from the Secretary of State talking about the fact that Huawei, in his view, is not the only Chinese company that poses a security risk. All of these things, plus arms sales to Taiwan, the South China Sea. How is this being digested in Beijing? Is it feeding into the hands of the hawks in China?
I think in terms of one of the things you mentioned, CGN, China General Nuclear, was declared to be put on the entities list last Friday. And this is a company that is building Hinkley Point in the UK. £2.5 billion pounds have already gone in. Now, what do you do with a company like that? I think that from the Chinese side, all of these things are seen as short-term blips. The Chinese take a more strategic view. What I see in terms of investments in China already is technology import substitution, development of exports to other countries than the US, reducing tariffs for other countries. That's already happened over the course of last year, while tariffs for the US has gone up. So you have a situation where the Chinese side is taking a much longer-term strategic view without paying that much attention to the latest tweet.
Are they trying to wait out President Trump past 2020? Well,
I think past 2020, given the China bashing has become a bipartisan game, it's not just Trump himself. It's overall U.S. attitude toward China in wanting to contain China. So you have to address that in a strategic way, in a longer-term way.
There's been a conversation about Huawei again this week, and something of a reprieve on one side, but also a number of its entities also blacklisted. Do you need to get Huawei solved before you get a trade deal? Is that the sense you're getting from the people you're speaking to in Beijing?
It's not that. I think in terms of Huawei, Huawei has backup plans, Plan B, Plan C, Plan D. Huawei actually has done quite well. As you had mentioned just now, that Xiaomi's missed the projections. But Huawei has done very, very well despite the pressures on the consumer end from the US. I don't think Huawei will be taken by the Chinese side as a chip. Taking it strategically, Huawei's actually doing well. Yes.
So Charles, what about not just Huawei? What about the suppliers, the people that are working along the supply chain of Huawei? We got this 90-day reprieve from the White House. Do you see that as just a temporary relief, or a sign that perhaps a progress here in these trade negotiations?
I don't see it as progress in the trade negotiations, because the issues being discussed in the trade negotiations is much more fundamental. It reaches the point of some Chinese describing it as potentially regime change attempt. In Huawei's case, reprieve is a very interesting word that's being used all over the place. Reprieve for whom? Is it reprieve for Huawei, or is it reprieve for the suppliers of American companies who are supplying components and technology to Huawei? There is a difference, by the way. For Huawei, they're now looking at domestic replacements for U.S. suppliers. They didn't have to do it before, and now they're doing it.
Charles, David here. I'm right beside Yvonne here in Hong Kong. Based on what you're saying, this all started about 16 months ago, and back then, companies said, we will plan transitory measures until we get a deal. And, 16 months after, we're still here and there's no end in sight. Would you advise companies now to just start planning 5-year time horizon, that we don't get a deal, and plan around just this confrontation continuing over the next few years?
Well, I think confrontation will continue. It will ebb and flow, especially on the technology side. CGN, by the way, last week was another example. But companies have to think about this in a much longer term, as the Chinese government seems to be doing, and Huawei seems to be doing as well, and not rely on the latest Twitter feed that's coming from this side or that side.